Hello, Tom again. In this video, what we're going to do is talk about the generic dictionary, which is a generic collection available to us in .NET. Before I get into that, though, what I want to do is I want to just talk a little addendum to the previous video. I forgot to show you. At the end of part 2 list, we had a for loop where I was pulling out the different grades as an object. And this made sort of sense when grade list was an array list, but it's a generic list at this point. So what I should have told you in the last video as well is to replace this for each loop with one that actually pulls out the individual grades uh, as a grade. It sort of makes more sense, and we can do that kind of thing with our list. So that shouldn't be that big of a deal. It helps if I say for each instead of for. There we go. And then of course, since the grade is already a grade, I don't have to say as grade at that point. So I'm actually going to comment that out for you, and we'll put it back in, but without the as grade business, because you wouldn't need it. So I'm just going to run that really quickly. It was option 2. Okay, and everything still works okay. So I just wanted to sort of backtrack a little bit to clarify how the for each loop should be done when you're dealing with a generic list. But at any rate, we're dealing with generic dictionaries in this video. So let's go ahead to the part 3 dictionary T static method, and we'll play around with it. So it's probably useful to review what a dictionary is. We talked about in the last tutorial using dictionary base to create our own strongly typed dictionary-based collections. Essentially, it's a collection that instead of being based on an integer index, it's based on a key value. So that's what we're going to be creating here. I want to create a dictionary that has a number of grades, but mapped to a student name. So my dictionary is going to have a key value, which is going to be a string, which is the student name, as well as a grade object. Okay, and it's going to sort of bind those two things together. So it's kept organized by the student name. This is the same sort of thing that if you're a student of mine, had done in C++ with the standard template library map. So similar to before, I'm going to define a couple of I'm going to define a constant for the maximum score and a variable for the user input, because we're going to be inputting the student grades. I'm going to create a list of student names. Since we know everything we need to know about a generic list right now, why don't I use the generic list to create a list of strings? So I'll do that. Okay, I've scrolled over a little bit too far here. Why don't I close this off? I don't think I even actually need that. But so you can read it. So I'll throw in some familiar names if you're a student of mine. This is my class list. Okay, so now I'm going to create the actual dictionary to map these student names to grades. Okay, and I'm going to call it grade map. So I'll use a dictionary. The dictionary inside the angle brackets, I specify both types. So the first type is the key value. In this case, I'm going to choose a string, but you could have a different key value other than string if you wanted to. And then the second value, which is going to be a grade object. Okay, so I'm calling it grade map and just calling the default constructor. So it's an empty dictionary of strings and grades. All right, so we're going to go through and similar to in the last video how we input the marks for the students, but this time I'm not saying student 1, student 2, student 3. I want to do it by name. All right, so I'm going to use a for each loop, I think, for every name that's in my class list. That's a good way of organizing this. Okay, so for each string student name in my class list, I want to do some stuff. Okay, I'll prompt for the user score and store that input more or less the same way I did that before. And again, if I do something that can't be parsed, it's going to be caught by my exception handling in my main method. I'll do the same very basic validation I did before. Okay, where if the user puts in something that's larger than the maximum score, it just sets it to the maximum score, or less than 0, it just sets it to 0. Okay. All right, so now I want to actually add this information to the dictionary. So I'm adding not only the grade, but the student name as well. Okay, and I'm going to do that in a try catch block, and I'll explain why in a second. So it's quite simple. In my try block, I'm going to, well, let's indent a bit here. So I'm going to take my grade map. I'm going to add something. What am I going to add? And you can see IntelliSense is able to figure out that this is a dictionary of strings and grades. So the first thing comes the string. That's going to be the student name. Okay, I have that. And then the second thing is the grade. So it'll be a new grade. Okay. And of course it'll be the double integer constructor version here, the one with two values. So it'll be the input score, and the highest possible score will be max score. And I think that should do the trick. Did that do the trick? I think so. Okay. So that'll add the student name and the grade to the actual dictionary. Why am I doing that in a try block? Here's the main thing that'll come up is what happens when the student is already in the list. You may have caught this, but there are 2 Toms in my class. Okay, so I need to deal with that. Okay, this is maybe some kind of a mistake, but if that's the case, okay, the second time that I try to add Tom to the list, in C++ with a map, it just updates what the value is. In C#, what it does is it throws an argument exception. So the argument exception is an indication that the key value is already in the dictionary. So what do I want to do? Well, what I'll do instead is just update the grade for that repeated student. So we'll do that. Okay, so I'm saying the grade map at position student name. I know that student name is in there, or else it wouldn't have thrown the exception. Dot score. Okay, and I'm able to use dot score because it knows that the the value is a grade, is equal to input score. So I'm updating it instead. So now I'll just display a little report. Before I display that report, of course, I should actually close off that input loop. Okay, now I'm ready to display my report. I'll output a little bit of a header. I'll use another for each loop. In this case, I'm using for each student string in grademap.keys. I can use the keys. You can look in the various different options here. There's keys and values are the 2 that you'll often use. I'm going to use keys anyways. So for every student in the keys part of the dictionary, I want to display some stuff. I'll just do some formatted console write line here. All right, and that's the end of my for each loop. Okay, so I'm writing out the student name. It's going to be left aligned, but padded in a field of 15. So left aligned in a field of 15, and instead of spaces, I'm using dots. So that's just a little bit of formatting that I'm using that there, followed by the actual the value. So the grade map at position student gives me the actual grade there. All right, so I'm not going to, modify this too much. It's just a straightforward use of a generic dictionary in a contextual example. So we'll try running this. Okay, so it's option 3 here. Final project grade for Tom. Oh, I didn't do so well on my final project. I only got, say, 11 on it. Okay, Darren's all my colleagues are smart here, so I'll give Darren a pretty good mark. Davey is brilliant. And then Andrew, also a smart guy. And Stephen for sure as well. All good. Oh, and there's Tom again. So my second attempt. All right, and maybe I did a little bit better on my second attempt. Okay. So there's my final project grades. So you can see the Tom's been updated, so the latest one, and everyone else has the marks that I entered. Okay, so that's using a dictionary, which might be a generic dictionary, which might be a handy thing to do. So that's everything for this video. In the next video, what we'll look at is creating our own generic class. Thank you very much.